Injuries continue to plague Major League Baseball, and most recently we heard the injuries around Spencer Strider. He did have a visit with a Dr. Meister to learn if he's going to need a second Tommy John surgery. He underwent an MRI that revealed damage to his UCL and his right elbow, as I'm like clutching my right elbow weirdly.
We all know what's coming.
And he is going to be further evaluated with Dr. Meister again at a date yet to be determined. But Spencer Strider, another one that's hit the UCL Tommy John surgery list. We already know that there's been plenty of others. Now we have Dr. James Andrews, who works with a lot. He's a superstar doctor.
You never want to hear your superstar athlete is visiting Dr. James Andrews.
No,
That's
superstar doctor James Andrews was actually speaking about the increase in pitchers in recent years and just saying how a big part of it is because of the dramatic evolution in the game to want to throw faster, and naturally how it just has been wearing on pitchers' arms that they have needed to get Tommy John surgery.
Well, here's
not good though.
Here's the real issue. The human body is not meant to do what these guys do. And kids now, Tyler can probably speak to this as his dad coached. He played competitive baseball. Like, there's too much strain on kids' arms from an early age anymore, where they're throwing breaking balls that their arm shouldn't be throwing. They're trying to throw high velocity so they can get these college scholarships. By the time, they do get to college or get drafted, their arm is already taxed. Andrew Painter is a good example of this. Like, the human body is not meant to throw that motion 102 miles an hour and then go backdoor with like a 25 mile an hour changing vertical drop sweep. It's just too much. Like, I don't think the pitch clock has anything to do with it. I know the players union is trying to have the pitchers' backs in this. But like, I don't think that's the issue. I just think kids are blasting their arms before the age of 20, and it's just kind of an inevitability that it's going to happen. I don't think it's pitch clock related at all. Yeah. And I know that MLB came out and said, well, we had our own study done by Johns Hopkins doctors, and we disagree with the MLB players union's findings. Right. This issue isn't going away because, like, the storyline, even Jeff Passan and a ton are tweeting about it, like, oh man, 4 pitchers already down for the year. Like, this is kind of a problem. And Shane Bieber was excellent in his 2 starts. Spencer Strider is one of the best pitchers in baseball. I don't know what to say about it. I don't think it's pitch clock or load related. I just don't think these old school pitchers came up through life throwing breaking balls at age 10 and 11 and trying to max out, into the 90s at age 14. So I just think there's too much strain on the body these days. Tyler, your thoughts?
I mean, as honestly as you're talking about, for the MLB PA to say that the shorter pitch clock is contributing to it, because we have seen Shane Bieber, Strider, Yankees had one, Loaisiga, who has to have season-ending surgery. I said his name wrong. Jorge Castillo. There's been a number of injuries that have happened. I know, going back to Dr. James Andrews' comments, and just as you mentioned, he was mentioning, today's game, you see a lot of, in youth baseball, the injuries are starting. And by the time they get to Major League Baseball, they've already surpassed and thrown more at the youth level than they have, at the professional level, where kids are throwing 90 miles per hour their junior year of high school.
Yeah, it's crazy.
The velocity, the amount of focus on the curveball and just overall the ligament itself not being able to withstand that. This is where, as the game is evolving and as pitchers, what they're throwing is evolving, you have to find a way to balance that, because the Tommy John ligament doesn't mature until about age 26, he was saying. And so that's another part of it, is like you're overextending yourself before your Tommy John ligament even has fully matured and reached the levels. Now, other sports, I know today's been a big sports crossover day. Other sports, such as soccer,
oh boy, here we
have implemented these rules at a young age. Concussions, for example.
Yeah, female concussions.
They've implemented rules at a young age to try to minimize concussions at the youth level.
Like, there's age 12,
bingo.
Right?
There's no headers before you're 12. They also don't even punt the ball until you're like 12 years old. And so there's been and then obviously in basketball, we've seen a change, definitely on the professional level with load management. Other sports are making changes to minimize these long-term injuries. The NFL has been making some changes. I know a lot of people complain about how soft the new rules are that the NFL is rolling out. It's to keep the players healthy. Major League Baseball needs to take a hard look at how they can keep these guys healthy, starting at the youth level, of minimizing this long-term damage that's being done to pitchers.
Yeah,
Tyler,
I'm curious your thoughts because your dad coach, he played in it.
I thought that Chris Bassett, he was on with, I think it was with Talking Baseball not too long ago, and I thought he kind of articulated it well where, I mean, obviously velocity's kind of taken over, and that's not a bad thing. And I think that we need to find a common ground, like a middle ground between, you know, velocity is everything, and these kids are throwing too hard too soon, because hitters have become more advanced as well in the way to keep up. Do you think the
year-round aspect of throwing is a problem?
No, I don't.
Because growing up, most kids played all sports. You know what I mean?
I don't.
Now it's everything specialized, and there's so much travel and like training and this and that that I wonder if the year-round aspect on the arm and shoulder.
I do think there is the flat plane versus the perpendicular plane is significant, I think. And if you go and watch, you know, I don't want to say like go watch like 70s baseball, but like even if you go and watch like early 2000s, guys' arms are more perpendicular when they're at the point of release to where you watch some of these guys now. And I don't want to go all the way to Chris Sale, because Chris Sale is like a trebuchet basically, and that's like a scary rotation to begin with. But some of these guys are almost parallel to the ground when they're releasing, and it's like it's that strain on the elbow that just should not exist. And so I don't think it's velocity. I don't think it's spin rate. I think it's the way that these guys are throwing is the bigger concern to me.
The way
granted,
they're throwing is to achieve.
Is attributing, yes, correct.
So it's all kind of the same.
But what I'm saying is I don't think there's like just you can throw hard and throw properly.
I have a question. I was going to say, is it partly, okay, did not play baseball, so I don't know, but I know in other sports I've seen this, where part of the reason why in soccer, for example, with concussions, or in basketball was more just like overuse injuries. Part of it was not being taught properly. Do you think it's this need to try to throw curveballs, fastballs, high velocity, and not fully being taught how? And just maybe kids overextend themselves too soon, trying to keep up with the Joneses and never really truly learning the mechanics of how to properly throw these pitches.
I think it's possible. I mean, you guys have heard me say plenty of times, one of my favorite sayings for pitchers or guys that are on the mound is there's a difference between a pitcher and a thrower. And I think some guys it takes, quite frankly, until they become professionals to stop being throwers, because a lot of these guys that throw ridiculously hard or have wicket breaking balls oftentimes are in fact the best player on their team and maybe the best player in their league, their county, their conference in college ball, whatever the case may be. It does take until a professional setting to learn how to become a pitcher, because you were just out there like Ben Joyce in it and throwing 104 and basically just, being better than everybody else. So I do think that there is merit to the objective of learning how to pitch and learning how to properly use like body mechanics and fluidity to become a more consistent pitcher. And so I think it's not one thing. It's pick and choose. It's a little bit of this. It's a little bit of this. It's a little bit of this, and it's all coming together to probably say, somebody in the comments said like the human body is just getting to a point where this is the breaking point of how hard a pitcher can throw, that a grown man can throw, because we've not evolved any further to be able to do this.
Yeah.
It's probably, like you said, Renee, guys are not being taught the proper mechanics and fluidity structure to pitch well and pitch with longevity. I think there's a little bit of everything coming into play here. I'm not going to pinpoint one thing, but it is becoming somewhat of an issue.
Yeah, I would say so. In the faces of your two leading Cy Young candidates, Garrett Cole and Spencer Strider, are gone. I mean, Garrett Cole might come back. There's still
there
hope
is an
there.
update actually. He's
But I feel like whenever you say, "Oh, we're gonna give it some rehab and rest and approach," all you're doing is really delaying the Tommy John surgery. Now, I'm the guy that took Garrett Cole in our fantasy league because it was round like 18, and I was like, "All right, at this point, I'm fine with like taking a chance that it does work."
Yeah.
But more often than not, when does it work?
I know.
Like,
I
never.
think part of the issue is, in addition to everything you guys have said, which is correct, Cleveland John made a good point in the chat about it's a problem across all sports where kids' bodies are being pushed harder and harder to the breaking point. I think for every Caitlin Clark getting offered $5 million by Ice Cube, Shohei Ohtani getting an incredible deferred contract to the Dodgers, every time we see these breaking sports news, I think, unfortunately, at the youth level is what it impacts the most. Because what we miss out on is, in order for these superstar athletes to become superstars, it took them time, and they got the chance to be kids, and they got the chance to also go out and play. And most of it was them playing for fun, playing with their brothers or sisters or older kids or neighborhood kids. It wasn't this overly force structured, you're going to be the next LeBron. You're going to be the next, Caitlyn or Asia Wilson or, the next Messi. No, it was timing. And I think, unfortunately, because of social media and even the way that we have more resources now, like growing up for us, it was just you go out and you just play. Now there's all types of different like structured things that are in place to make kids try to be the next superstar. And it's forcing them to have to grow up, and their bodies can't keep up. They're overextending themselves too long because, even as you mentioned, most kids, like I played soccer, basketball, I ran track.
Say, if one of my daughters ends up being Caitlin Clark level good, I'm still going to force them to play the other sports.
Because playing other sports even helps manage your different muscles you don't normally work on. Gives you a time to
baseball's uniquely
balance.
different than everything else. And
I don't
the
think
arm
we're
isn't
seeing
meant
that.
to throw baseballs 130
Youth
miles
sports
an hour.
now, and I can say this as someone has worked in it, coached in it. Now it is more than even the collegiate level. You're playing year round, you're traveling all over, you're paying ridiculous money. It's a whole different topic in itself, but I think it's causing kids to be burnt out.
I don't know this for a fact, but I would bet you Spencer Strider has had a pitching coach since he was like 13.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure.
I don't doubt it at all.
And it's because you hear...
And obviously it worked, but
that's the thing, you hear it.
You're just eventually going to get hurt.
And I think that's what it makes it a double-edged sword, because it does work.
Yes.
And you do see, okay, you know what? Serena Williams and Venus started young, and their dad pushed them, and it played out for them, and they ended up being, some of the best athletes ever. And so I'm going to do that with my child, but it's not the same for every person. Your body, your physical makeup, your talent, some of it is just natural, God-given ability.
Science to figure out, kind of. Like I don't know what you do. I think these UCL injuries are just going to be a part of the game now, because, like you just said, like the results are there. Like Spencer Strider's just like effortlessly pushing 100 miles an hour on his fastballs, and then the floor's falling out of his breaking stuff, and it's just like, unfortunately, your elbow is going to have to deal with the repercussions of how good you are. It's unfortunate, but I don't see how it changes.
I know. It essentially becomes survival of the fittest, of whoever can stay healthy and make it to the pros and actually be able to still play and stay healthy with that.